I'm Cindy Zimmerman, and with my colleague Barbara Sexton, we'd like to both invite and welcome you to the art department and to Mesa College, and to introduce you to Kaoru Mansour. Kaoru is a painter who's influenced from nature and its ability to provide a constant source of beauty and lyricism. Tonight we'll have an opportunity to see more of her artwork and to experience more deeply her acute sensitivity to nature and its processes. She's been working in Los Angeles since 1986. Her work has been exhibited not only in Southern California, but also in Asia and in Europe. Please welcome to our program Kaoru Mansour.
First, I want to say thank you for inviting me to your gallery. I really had a good time today talking to the other students and artists, and Barbara and Alessandra and Pat and other gallery staff. Thank you so much. And tonight I want to explain about myself a little bit, and then we see the slide. I was born in Japan, and I've been here a little over 17 years. And I grew up quite countryside, surrounded by rice field and mountains in Japan. And my father was math teacher who loves Buddha statue and shrines and temples. And my mother was a housekeeping wife who made all our clothes. And when I was a kid, I played with neighbors' children in a mountain and a field. And we played rocks and, river, pond, all those kind of things. Also plants. The daffodils, daisies, and chrysanthemums. Also, we learned which one is a poison ones, So I guess I was very close to nature. Let's see. When I have to decide which college I have to go, even though I always liked art, I didn't, being an artist wasn't my choice because I never met anyone around me doing artwork and making Americans meet. So I decided to go to medical lab technician college because I liked math and science too. And during college time, the things I loved the most was drawing cells through the microscope, and I just really, really enjoyed that. Then at the same time, I saw the other students subscribe like medical magazines, talk about that, fascinated by that. And I knew somehow I won't be a good technician as they would be. And at the same time, I kind of lost my self-respect. So I started reading a lot of newspaper classified ads. And one day I found this small graphic office was looking for the assistant. So I went to there, took an interview, they said they will hire me. So I told my parents, I need a little break from the college. So I started going to the office, learning how to measure the font. Those times they didn't have any computer to design the graphic, and how to illustrate for the newspaper, those kind of stuff. And nighttime, I joined this immature fusion rock band and started singing. And I also liked singing, but this is another thing. It's very unpractical thing to do. So I never thought, that would be my profession. And but somehow ends up this rock band won a big Yamaha's rock competition, and we started getting recording offers, and eventually band broke up. But I ended up having contract with RCA Japan and made 2 albums, and 4 years later, just my album weren't selling that good, and I started doing more experimental music, and I started looking for the label, do that type of music. And I found one in England, it's called Hamster Record, and they do all experimental music, and I started recording it by myself. And at that point, I really didn't have to live in Tokyo. So I decided to move here for a change, and at the same time I was still recording. And I thought maybe I should take something different than music. So I started taking extension class in Otis, and I just loved it because I could have the whole control. And music, type of music I was doing is I have to play with musicians and engineers, and there was always small compromise, And I was just so fascinated. I have 100% control on the paper or anything, you create. And I kept taking different classes, and I wanted to learn more about art, and never got so tired of that. Just 24 hours I could think, and I thought this is really the thing. And I accumulated a lot of slides. I started sending to the galleries that I thought they appropriate for my art, and a lot of rejections, just a pile of rejections. But after a while, I kept sending them. The order started coming in, and I was working a day, but I stopped working, and let's see, about 10 years now I've been freelancing and as a freelance artist. And maybe we will see the slides now. And if you have any question, please interrupt me, and so I can explain things. Okay, this is about 10 years ago. Before that, my whole passion was abstract impressionism, and I did a lot of work, but today I didn't bring a slide. And this was 10 years ago. I started interested in little assemblage stuff. So top 3 is small canvases, and I think gesso is the black thing, and the bottom part is on cheesecloth, and I believe that is a light bulb block and molded underneath, and the small letter, I think, just for contrast of it. And right before this piece, I moved to this house where I had a huge yard, and there are so many plants. Still, I live in the same place. And just somehow my childhood experience triggered it, and I just went crazy about the plants what we had in the yard. So this is kind of hard to tell, but the middle section of the board, behind of that things, this is like a camellia image. And I was still a little afraid to use the plant. I don't know, my subconsciousness maybe still like a use as an abstract image, I think. And those red blocks, the bottom is my son's wood blocks. He was playing, I stole it. This is another one, little more camellia shape, you can tell probably right side. And the red one is a thread, red thread. And left side is I used those long wood, just testing my airbrushing, before I start. And it came out kind of nice, so I added little different circles and cut it out and used it. This is behind has a little daisy image, I think. And I went to the hardware store, and there is like a packing of the plumbing things. And especially that big thing, this is rubber, I pasted. And these are like, I don't know, some kind of plumbing device, I think. And I pasted it. And this is, underneath is wax. This is the chrysanthemum, gabella. And left side is also the, my studio is just always absolutely mess, and I think I spilled over something. And I really liked the image, so I cut it out and put those stick, because I like that combination of the color. And I think right side, I pasted, I think I pasted the paper, collage work paper on the board. So it looked a little wobbly. This is the probably first one I did, and plant image came more forward than a background. I copied two same image and pasted it. And they used press-it things you can, I don't know now, they really don't carry this stuff now because everyone can print it out by the computer. But I used that one. And the burned paper by the, cooking burner, that you make caramel, things. And so you were not going to burn the whole paper, So I did that. And I think a bunch of layers of the tracing paper, this one. And let's see, and airbrush around the image. This is on Stonehenge paper, and a bunch of camellia images. And before that is an I think those archive molding glue, I dropped it, a bunch of those bump stuff. And I stick the wood, what you call those small round piece, and painted that color and paste it over. Let's see. Yeah, that's about it. And this one is different because my son became 1.5 and 2. I got introduced to Dr. Seuss book and Curious George, and I was just absolutely fascinated by those illustrations. And after my son went to bed, and I couldn't just forget it, so I started drawing some kind of image like inspired by those books. So I was still doing plants things, but I went a little bit side. And this paper is like a handmade paper. It's no longer available, and someone making it at Santa Barbara, and now I cannot get it. This is also, right side is the image from inspired by Dr. Seuss book, and left side is a pearl acrylic mixed with acrylic medium and pour it over. The middle is like a more you brushed over. Also same. And this top part is a shadow box. You put like insect and stuff. You go to the craft shop, they sell those. It's pretty cheap comparing like a regular canvas is a wooden box you buy from art store. And the top part has probably, can't tell much, but I put BBs. So I just, this one just actually made for my son, just so he can just move it and play around. And it came out kind of interesting, I thought.
How big are you?
I'm sorry?
How large are you?
They're quite small. It's, I would say, is this 5-inch? I don't know. 5-inch and maybe 8. And this is the first IRO series. Still, background is muddy, and this is combine of Dr. Seuss inspiration and the plants. And I really liked it because I always liked some unbalanced kind of what you say. If you read the statement, probably understand what I mean. Just it's very organic shape against geometric shape, and that's for me. It really attracted me. So I started doing this style. Still now, but this period I did a lot of work like that. And this is like a black and white copy machine. I copy it, and then I scan by the high resolution scanner, and then print out by the archive ink. So the UV doesn't affect the ink. I don't know how much those black ink get affected, but I was afraid of fade out. And this is one piece. And I needed a little height, so I added this. So like two plants together here. And all those shapes are written by those pigment ink pen and acrylics. And those round shape, I did the airbrush. I made an stencil and used the airbrush. And this is also the inspired by children's book image. And our yard fun, and the process is same. This one is one of the painting in my statement, and I had this pods and left couple hours, and the orange, really bright orange things came out. Pod opened up, the big orange things came out from inside, and I wanted to bring that image to my paintings. So this is the painting from that surprise. This is the work in the gallery now. This is baby grapes, just right before grapes become each thing become big. They start off like that, and actually covered by white fungus. And I was watering, and I found it somehow. That image was so interesting for me, and so I kind of tried to make make it, how I felt. So that's actually the fungus with the grapes. Okay, I think this is the last one. This is also in a gallery. And this image came from my son climb up to the apricot tree, and he said he wanted to live there. And he brought up a bunch of groceries, plastic bag, and put it in an apple and all those things he can survive in at the tree. And I looked from the distance, and it was a really interesting image because a lot of plastic bags and different, like a Gap bag or whatever, just hanging everywhere in the branch of the apricot tree. So I wrote down that, and then somehow ends up this image. I think that's about it about slide. And I can, if anyone has question, I scan it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I scan it, I don't like it, so I just take the image to this beat up black and white copy machine I have. I kept repairing because I like the strange effect, like ink passes So then I do that, and then I scan again and make sure the color stays on a little longer. It's layers of the acrylic medium. And I used this crackling effect, and there are so many ways you can make that. What I use is like you can go to the hardware, like old furnishing kind of effect. And then I use, mix your own favorite color of the pigment and you rub it in. And it's ready-made one is much darker, so like a much more dramatic effect you can get by that. So it depends, and different color they comes. But some people use like a crackling already effect paper and paste it over. And, or like bake it, like put the oil and mixed things and you put in oven, I heard. And also like a raku in Japanese pottery, they burned it and dip into the cold water, so just all those chemical cracks. So you can just do different way, but I use like furnishing things. And then, let's see, I put the plants image, and then I used the Gambi rice paper, tissue paper, and then I put over. So it's more has more different shade, and that's kind of, it's more interesting, I thought. And then like a layered of the acrylic, just acrylic layered of it. And I prefer wax, I think, because the depths of the shyness and all those things. But my personality is very clumsy, and I used to use wax and just bonk into something and be a huge dent, and you gotta work on again, and it's really, I have to find a new material, So this is like a pretty similar effect, and I can draw over. It's something with hard tip, and I like it. And then after is the most fun part, I decide the image, go with plants and put it on airbrushing sometimes, or a pigment pen, and yeah, that's about it. I think sometimes I use pencils because those rugged effect is more interesting than straight, smooth lines. I like all kind of music. I like house music, industrial, I like experimental kind of things. I like classic. I like Bach a lot and Stravinsky, but sometimes they distract me because it's too much different movement. And what I don't recommend is like a bagpipe and all those things. I just can't pay. I can't. Maybe not the Irish people, but jazz, all the like 50s, 60s jazz, I like a lot. Sometimes I have like clear visual, like a clear but vague, like I want to have very Indian looking or something. It's if I go to the fabric store, like a Thai silk or Indian fabric fascinated me. Okay, this is it. Like the next image is like this, but it's not detailized. But most of the times I find the plants first, and what I like, and I paste it, and I looked at it, and I looked at my notebook of my little note of the shapes or image or something like that, and then, okay, this fits or that, and then more detailized, like especially this piece, I wrote down the hanging plastic bag and all those things, little sketches. But this one doesn't go with that kind of, thing. So I work on little shape goes with it. And this ends up like a yo-yo, and I kind of like it. So it's depends. But usually I have a plants, and then I kind of click with the plants and decide the geometric shape. I had a museum show 2 years ago. And I don't know. It's young people reacted really good, and some old people made a comment to me. It's I'm still in the process. It's like because I think what he meant is, it's not really traditional Japanese things, but it has element in it. But it's not exactly Western thing either. And I think he wanted me to be the one side almost, So that was, I thought, an interesting comment. This one actually I did on later, a little bit, I pressed it. Put a little sepia darker and this and that. But sometimes, naturally that happened. Cracks big, and then I put the pigment, and then it become darker and dramatic one area. So I just use that effect, when I make a composition. And this case is just, it's too plain, and I needed more movement, and I put it in later. I think first time I saw wax thing, I just fascinated. It was just beautiful. Well, that's I thought, and so I was experimenting different way, and like you use acrylic varnish, matte varnish, and you put so many layers, it cracks. It's just like and you dry it, it cracks. It has a risk of the like your artwork changes later, and so like I experiment and staying on form, and that's also really fun part, I think. IRO is a color. I used to do the just black and white, and this one, I think just small, very minimum color makes so much accent, and on this series painting, and so I just took that. Then you buy those caustics jar and just paste it. And what I did is I tried to burn it with those cooking fire things. But I never did really huge piece. Like I probably 16 by 16 panel, so it's much more easy to handle it. That's an like a pigment pen. Like 0.05 comes the thinnest. And they have different color. You go to the art store and like archive pigment pen, and they don't fade away that easy. Is that okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.